Hello, my beautiful friends. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hi, hello, welcome. I am Sherilyn, and I am so glad you found me. If you're not new here, welcome back. Thank you for joining me every single upload. You know I love and I appreciate you so much. If you're wondering, Sherilyn, your hair looks frizzy, as if you got on a plane and left your vacation 2 days ago and have still slept in the hair that you left your vacation on 2 days ago. You're right. You're absolutely right. Part of it might be denial. Part of it is just sheer laziness. And that's about 90% of it. But I wanted to be here today. And so a face was all I could manage. Today's a heavy day for me today. If I'm feeling a little bit somber in this intro, I mean, usually the topic is quite somber that we speak about, but my intros, I do try to keep them more upbeat and lighthearted for you. But today is the 15th anniversary since one of my dear friends was murdered. And every year is really hard, but today is like really kicking the shit out of me. And I mean, 15 is a huge number. And then I think I just I'm reflecting right now on where my life is and where his should be, and that he never got the chance to do that. And yeah, so totally not about me, but I just wanted to share with you. Makes me feel a little bit better, even though you're not physically here right now as I'm talking to you. I don't know, it feels like you are, because you're gonna see this and you mean so much to me. And so that I know that you can feel my vibe instantly. I'm not a very good liar or somebody that can hide their emotions very well. It's always written on my face. So yeah, if you're wondering why, that's why. When you see this video, the anniversary would have been yesterday. So today's Friday. It was on Thursday. So I'm sure today, as you're seeing this, I am feeling much better. All right, we're going to get right into it today. Thank you for hearing me out and letting me just process that. Also, thank you for the support on the last multi-case video. I was really hoping that it would be well received because it gives me a chance to bring even more attention to cases in a more condensed, I guess, amount of time. I wish I could do a video every single day, but this allows me to do multiple videos in a week and just get that information out there that much quicker. So thank you for the response from the last video. This is another multi-case episode today. Today we are talking about 2 cases. One of them I've been wanting to talk about for a really long time. The young man who we're talking about was from where I am in Edmonton. His disappearance has haunted me. It didn't happen in Edmonton, but this is where his family is. And it's really, really stuck with me over the years. The other case was one that was sent to me by a long supporter of the channel. Her handle on YouTube just starts with a J, so I'm just going to refer to her as J. And since I've heard about this one, I have just been racking my brain about what in the shit happened here. These are both cases about 2 young men who left a party full of people, walked home to their houses that were both close by, and never made it home. Let's start with Ryan Shtuka. Ryan was only 20 years old when he went missing from the Sun Peaks Resort in British Columbia in the early morning hours of February 17th, 2018. He was from Beaumont, right nestled in Edmonton, but he had traveled to that ski resort village in British Columbia with a longtime friend of his to work the winter season. If you're not familiar with Canadian geography, British Columbia, or BC, is right next to Alberta, the furthest, west you can get from Canada, part of Canada. It's absolutely stunning, must see. And I'm sure the beauty was a huge part of what drew Ryan to go there, and as well as his passion for snowboarding. He had been boarding since he was just a little kid. So landing this job as a seasonal lift operator at Sun Peaks and then allowing him to board pretty much every day, either before or after work, probably would have been just this ideal situation. On top of that, he went with a good friend of his and met some roommates, and they became great friends as well. He and his friend arrived on December 1st, 2017 and moved in with 3 other roommates. By all accounts, he was very much enjoying himself, and he was keeping in steady contact with his family back in Alberta. Ryan came from a very close-knit family. He and his siblings were tight, and he was really close with his mother, Heather, and his father, Scott. Like I said, he kept in regular contact, meaning he was texting his mom pretty much every day, and he was calling his father just as much daily to keep him company on his commute to work. And on their last conversation, he told his dad how happy he was and that he was just going on his 36th day straight of snowboarding. He also had just landed his very first backflip, with just thinking about that scares the crap out of me. There was absolutely no indication that anything was wrong in Ryan's life or that anything terrible was about to happen. On the evening of February 16th, 2018, Ryan had finished up his shift as the lift operator at Sun Peaks. He finished up at 7 p.m., headed home, and started getting ready because he had plans to go out night on in the town with his friends and roommates. After showering, getting ready, he and his friends caught a ride into like the Sun Peaks Village. Their first stop was to go to a bar called Mesa's Bar and Grill. I guess they only had one drink there, and then they headed over to a popular local bar called Bottoms. And at Bottoms that night, they were having a silent disco. I could only imagine how much fun they had that evening. Don't knock it till you try it. I did. I was like, I'm not going to participate in this on a recent vacation. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to try it. And when it was over, I was devastated. It was so fun. Ryan's friends said it was a blast. There was like 3 DJs. If you've never been, you get a headphone set, and then you can click through channels of each DJ, and then each color usually shows up like on your headphones, so you can see like, okay, this DJ is red, this is blue, this is green. And sometimes when you see like the whole crowd switch from one color, you're like, okay, what's going on over there, right? So the DJs can see, all right, well, they're jamming out to me right now, and then the other one's battling to get everybody on their channel. Anyways, super cool. And Ryan and his friends were having so much fun. He said that it felt like they had only listened to like 2 songs, and then all of a sudden it was done, which is so relatable. You're like, what? It just got started. So one of Ryan's roommates that was with him, a gentleman named Chris, he said, you know, the night was such a blast, but it went too fast. So when everything was over, they're like, none of us want to go home yet. And they heard about a nearby house party that was going on. So they decided as a group they were going to leave together and go and check out this house party that was located on Burfield Drive. Chris said when they arrived, it definitely seemed more like a hangout, not a house party. They recognized and knew a lot of the people there. They were just like regulars that they met on the hill, or people who also worked at Sun Peaks Resort. And he said it was just like more of like a mellow hangout than a party. So they only stayed till about 1:30 in the morning, and then decided they were going to walk back to their house, which was close by. So I just want to show you guys how close the houses were. And I've got the one marked with a red X saying party, and then the other X, that is Ryan's house. So the distance diagonally between that is only about 630 feet apart. This is like the back way though, and this is only showing what the area looks like in like the summer or spring. This was winter, covered in snow. Usually the snow is like upwards of like 6 feet plus. So you're not just gonna like cut through all that dense forest, snowy area. You're gonna have to go around. So even though they're only like a few hundred feet away, you're backtracking because you have to go all the way around and then come back around to your house. There's 2 ways to do that. I came across a video on YouTube called The Unfound, and he explains it really well. The purple area would be like the fastest route to go, but it was the most dangerous. It was the most like heavily covered in snow this time of year specifically. So it really only left you with one option, which is the one in green. That was the safest path. As Ryan's roommate, Chris, and his girlfriend and their friend were getting ready to leave, Ryan was kind of taking his time, putting his boots on, saying his goodbyes, and he was like, just, go ahead, I'm going to catch up with you real soon. Again, they know the area, and their house is, quite literally like in the backyard. So they leave. Not long after, Ryan leaves, but was never seen again and never made it home. According to Chris, the next morning, it wasn't super obvious. He headed to work and at that point hadn't even realized that Ryan didn't come home. It's when he got to work he found out that Ryan didn't show up for his shift. And initially his friends were just saying, okay, well, maybe he ended up leaving the party with a lady friend that evening, or decided that he was just going to crash on the couch and not even like try to contend with the outdoors. But he didn't show up for his entire shift that day, and that was not like Ryan. And then when they got home, he still was not at home and didn't show up that evening, and that was when alarm bells went off. First thing they did was they went to a local Facebook group, again, like cute little resort snowboarding skiing community. Everybody kind of knows everybody, and they just posted on there, did anybody see Ryan yesterday or at all today? And nobody had. By 9 p.m. that next day, they called hospitals to see if anybody was there matching Ryan's description, who maybe had like amnesia or something like that. There wasn't. And at that point, they were advised to notify the police. The police came to their home around midnight, and at this point felt like it was needed to reach out to Ryan's parents, Heather and Scott, and let them know what was going on. I can't even imagine receiving that phone call as parents. Naturally, Heather and Scott immediately made their way out to BC to look for Ryan. There were a lot of people who just hit the ground running, trying to help out as much as they possibly could. Search and rescue was called. Tons of people, friends from the community were out there looking, and the initial thought was maybe he was struck by a car and this person didn't even realize it, or he had a medical emergency while he was walking and fainted and was somewhere. The community was asked to check their sheds, check all of the surveillance footage. And something that made it even harder and more frustrating was that evening that Ryan walked home, nearly 20 centimeters of snow had fallen that night, and the temperature had gone all the way down to minus 20 Celsius, minus 4 Fahrenheit. And they thought maybe he had suffered hypothermia because he wasn't dressed for that weather. He was last seen just in dark jeans, a gray and white shirt, a blue coat, and a burgundy colored baseball hat, so not even like a toque. The only early leads that were ever given were two, and these were reports from people who believed they saw Ryan after he left the party or heard Ryan. One had come from somebody who reported seeing a young man that was walking in the direction of like a local pizza shop around 1:30. So the thought was maybe it was Ryan and he was trying to get to this pizza shop before it closed at 2 a.m. I guess none of the security cameras were functioning that evening. That person had never come forward to say like it was me and never had been identified. So that's never been ruled out as being Ryan. Now another man reported hearing like a really loud shouting voice. He felt like it was very clear and it was somebody saying, "Get in the car, get in the effing car." He shared this with police. He was contacted a couple times, but then he said he was never spoken to again. I will say, even though there wasn't a lot of leads, being Canadian and Albertan, that early search for Ryan did gain a lot of attention. There was a lot of traction going on from what I could see. And I think everybody was just praying, holding their breath day in and day out that he was going to be found. I mean, they had excavators, helicopters, bobcats, drones, dogs. I guess there was even a dive team when the, weather warmed up and was permitted. This went on for months, but it was so frustrating because there was basically nothing to go off of. No footprints, none of his clothing. And then on top of that, you're dealing with excruciating weather conditions and just like the natural elements. I mean, this area is dense. Here's another screenshot of just like the Google Earth of this like Burfield area. When you pull back out of that neighborhood, the amount of trees is like, I can't even imagine how overwhelming that is. Like, it's just like a sea of black. It looks like ocean almost. And that is just like heavily wooded denseness. And this is just like a small pullback when you can just like keep going on for days and days and just see how thick this area is. Ryan's family has had my heart and attention for so long. They have been relentless in their search. I mean, I say it so many times, probably every single episode. We are not prepared to take on these situations in life if they ever were to happen to us. You don't have guidance on what to do, where to do it, how to do it, the resources, the finances. But Ryan's family is just like a constant reminder of what is the alternative? Like, you just don't? No. So when they did the initial search of that area in 2018, like I said, the initial thought was that maybe Ryan had fallen into a gully and then he was just covered in really heavy snow that had fallen that night and for the rest of that weekend. Early on, they had like bobcats and excavators come and dig as much as they could, but everybody was holding on to the hope that when the snow melted along that path where, the assumption would have been that he would have fallen or got hit and somebody may have not noticed or did notice and did the wrong thing and drove away, he was going to be found when the snow melted. When it did though, after winter, there were no signs of him. And this is how it's been since 2018. And to this day, Ryan's parents still go back, I believe, monthly to search for their son at Sun Peaks. Each season, each year, it only becomes harder. I read a very interesting point that came from Ryan's mom, Heather, and she explained, obviously, in those really early moments, the investigation was very hindered because of the snow and the weather conditions. But even after that snow melted, there was just still a small window that they could work with in the spring, because all of a sudden, all of this like terrain and foliage grows in. It's super thick, dense, and extremely easy to miss something. There's also a really good chance that over time, any remains that may have been there have been scattered by wildlife. So you're left with that frustration of, even though an area may have been searched in those early days in the winter and then in the early days in the spring, there's a thick layer of leaves and brush that could be covering him. I've never been to Sun Peaks, but I guess there's only one way in and out, and it's about a 45-minute drive down the mountain to the next town. Further adds to the frustration because it feels like, more people could have seen him. It should be easier to find what path he took because there's not like these multiple exits and entrances. And that's left a lot of speculation, a lot of it pointing to foul play. I will say that our CMP have said that after extensive interviews with everybody close to Ryan and people that were at the party that evening, they don't have any reason to believe that any foul play has been involved. That doesn't change the fact that a lot of residents who live there day in and day out don't necessarily feel the same. Some of the theories are, like I said, that he was struck by a vehicle. He could have possibly at this point been put into that vehicle and then taken out of Sun Peaks, and that's why nobody saw him on that one path in or out. There was a resident that wrote on a forum that I came across that said, I guess specifically in the middle of the night, there have been drunk drivers that just fly down this path that Ryan would have taken. The person who wrote said he specifically had almost been hit like 3 separate times. He also said that only a few years prior to Ryan disappearing in 2015, somebody was hit in the evening by a drunk driver, and this person just kept driving and left the person. They were never caught. And this person said that doesn't even surprise them, and that they're actually surprised that more people haven't been struck just based on what they've personally experienced themselves. On top of it, I guess this road specifically is extremely dark. It's not well lit. You can hardly see like what is in front of you like a meter ahead. What Ryan's mom believes, I mean, you'll never know. She is very well aware that she does not know, but she doesn't think that Ryan met any foul play due to like an altercation, like or provoked fight. She said he's not a confrontational person. He's not an instigator. It's just completely out of his character to go out there and, shake things up and want to start a fight. And she also doesn't believe that his roommate, Chris, who has been ripped apart in the court of public opinion, had anything to do with Ryan's disappearance. This is something else we talk about a lot on the channel. People's reputations just from assumptions by people who don't even know them, have never been in the situation, trying to ruin somebody's life. And this happened with Chris. He was blasted because he only took 3 days off work to help in Ryan's search. You got to keep in mind, I mean, this guy is a seasonal worker. He is not from Canada. money is really tight. I mean, this comes from firsthand experiences by a lot of family members that are survivors that Gavin and I personally speak to or have had on the podcast. There's no insurance policy available to victims, surviving family members of victims. You don't plan for this emotionally, physically, or financially. So if a family member isn't getting that financial aid and assistance, how can a friend, a roommate that he just recently met a few months prior, be able to keep a roof over his head? Another thing that he was really harshly criticized on was that 2 weeks after Ryan's disappearance, he had gone on a ski trip with a friend of his who came from Australia, so a lifelong friend of his. They had already had this trip planned for like months, like a year. And people's opinions and thoughts and critique were that he should have canceled the whole thing and not done it. And I'm not gonna lie, if I were in this situation, I would not want to cancel seeing my best friend in a situation like this. I personally have had family members who have kept travel plans in very traumatic events in their lives simply because they're just like, I need this reprieve. You're not out like, as Gavin likes to say, when I go somewhere gallivanting. It's sometimes just that mental break that you just momentarily need. Heather personally herself has also said she cannot 100% say that she doesn't feel or know for sure that any of the friends or people that were there at the party know what happened to Ryan. But when it came to Chris, she definitely felt like he had nothing to do with Ryan's disappearance. She said that Ryan really looked up to Chris. He was older than Ryan, and even if, there were plans to go out with Chris and the other roommates and Chris's girlfriend, and Chris and his girlfriend decided just to hang back and stay back, Ryan often did too. He liked hanging with them, and she really truly believed that Chris and his girlfriend were Ryan's true friends. Something also to keep in mind is they only knew each other for about 2 months. Despite that, Chris said that they became very close. He said that it took Ryan a couple days to open up, and then, right away, like within a week or so, he was teasing him about his Australian accent. He'd mimic certain words that he said, and Chris said they became pretty tight in those 2 months. Chris now is back living in Australia. He still is open about talking about Ryan and his case, and one of the main things that he talks about is people always asking him, why did you leave Ryan that night? His words on that and reflection of that is, of course, given, a crystal ball, you would have never ever done that. To this day, it's something that he regrets. But in that moment, he's thinking, we're all adults. We make our own decisions. He wasn't going to press and be like, come on, Ryan, it's time to say goodbye to everybody. He didn't know what his plans were. Maybe there was a gal there that he had been chatting up with. Who is he to get in the middle of that? So he said what's kept him going and confident in that decision is that he knew Ryan. He in the court of public opinion and all these people who don't know Ryan, Chris did. And he feels like if Ryan wanted him to stay back, he would have said so. And he would have. If he was like, hey man, wait up for me, I don't want to walk by myself, that's not an issue. But it was him who said like, go ahead, I'll be right behind you. And who's he to argue with that? He said to this day, it's very hard for him to move on. He wants answers just as much as everybody else. And when he thinks about it, he has no idea what could have happened, but he shares the same theory as Ryan's mom, Heather, that he wouldn't have been confrontational to start something. And he also felt like if Ryan had gone somewhere, he would have only done so with people he knew. He also doesn't believe that Ryan just willingly wandered off in this drunken wander adventure. He said that Ryan was not incoherent and out of his mind, obliterated. He was not shit-faced this evening, and made a great point that Ryan was really fit and experienced in that type of weather. So just, following the path to get to point A, from point A to point B, on a road, not within this dense wooded area, that should have been easy enough for Ryan. And listening to Heather and Scott speak about Ryan and about this whole process of wanting to find him. I don't want to like speak for them by any means, but it's like the impression that I get at this point, it's like that they're not even concerned about the what happened at this moment. They just want to bring him home. They just want to find him. I saw a news report about a volunteer that went out with the Shtukas in 2019 and brought their drones. And I guess the technology that they used at this point, they were able to like pinpoint certain colors in that area. So, like it's so dense and like kind of like the same like theme. You've got this like earthy tones, super daunting. But this technology, they were able to like pinpoint colors. So they went out and they were wanting to look for burgundy, because Ryan was wearing a burgundy hat that evening. I guess they had committed to a week with the Shtukas, free, volunteer, went out to BC. Unfortunately, though, nothing came up that week. I found it really fascinating, though, because I understand that people have to, they have to put a roof over their head as well. This goes back to the same, well, why couldn't you do that? It's like, it's not as easy as that. I'm sure they wish they could stay forever and help them until they find Ryan, but it doesn't work that way. But it got me thinking, that had been a few years ago, and technology evolves like so much on a daily basis. I can't imagine what like drone technology is like in 2023. And so I wanted to bring that up and wanted to put it out there. If there's anybody that knows of something like more high tech that can help, or a different feature on drones these days, I am not tech savvy. We all know this. But I would love to connect with somebody who has access to that stuff and that would be willing to help. If you do, please email me at sherilynndale@gmail.com. Something else that I wanted to bring attention to is that Heather recently wrote a book about Ryan's disappearance. But it's not just about Ryan's disappearance. It's this inside look at this like raw, vulnerable view into what happens to these family members and parents and friends behind the scenes who are dealing with this. She goes into like those early days, the years that go on, the guilt that you feel, not only for what you would have done in those early days, but like still living life. I can't even imagine. But I think it is so important to have this out there, not only for family members who are going through this, but also for those of us who haven't and will be fortunate enough to not ever go through this, but still be able to be a support and be able to empathize and help these families move further on in their healing and this new life that they have no choice but to be living in. I'm going to leave a link for Heather's book below. I would love to see reviews on it, just showering her with like Sippendale love. Someone left a comment recently about how we are just built different and how our community constantly shows up and makes a difference. And I could not agree more. It is so true. I can't even put into proper words like just how honored I am to have every single one of you want to be here and rally with me. I feel you arm in arm. We're just sprinkling our Sippendale love, support, and we're always there wherever we can. Heather's also a part of a foundation with other women who unfortunately are living in the same nightmare as she is. So if you're looking for, I know a lot of people, they can't give every time. And sometimes there's only, once a year that you can have your yearly donation that you always commit to for like a charity giving back. Tax season always kind of brings that up in people. Allows you to give a little more when, than you thought you might not have. Maybe it's even like your Facebook fundraiser, whatever it is. I'm sure it would mean so much to their foundation to be considered. So I will also leave that in the link below. If you have any information about the disappearance of Ryan Shtuka, you are asked to please call the Kamloops RCMP. You can call them at 1-250-828-3000. If you want to remain anonymous, you can also do so calling Crime Stoppers Kamloops, and that number is 1-800-222-8477. The next case I want to talk to you about is different than Ryan's in terms of him never being found. Todd, the man we're about to talk about, he was found, but it was under alarming conditions and unexplained circumstances. And like Ryan, he was last seen leaving a party. His name was Todd Geib, and in 2005, he was a 22-year-old young man and by all accounts just living his life and had everything going for him. He had a good job with a company called Hager Distribution Inc. It was located in Wyoming. And for fun, he enjoyed like a lot of outdoor activities and sports. Based on reports from everybody who knew him, he's described as friendly, smart, outgoing, liked to spend time with his friends, which is what he was setting out to do on Saturday, June 11th in 2005. Around 7:30 p.m., Todd left the apartment that he was sharing with his cousin and headed to the Half Moon Bar and Grill to go and meet up with some friends. I guess they hung out for a couple hours, and then around 9:30 they left. Similar to Ryan's evening, he wasn't quite ready to call it a night. So when he heard about this all-night keg party that was going on, he asked his friends who he was with to drop him off there. I guess this keg party was in a apple orchard. It was an area he was familiar with, though it was only about 1.5 miles away from his home, but it was outside. Reading about accounts of the evening, it sounds like initially things were great, good, fun, but around 12:45 a.m., some guys showed up who weren't friends with the majority of the people who were there, and it just sounds like they were there to stir up some crap and looking for trouble. Things apparently got pretty rowdy and a fight broke out. It's not clear if Todd was in the scuffle. The majority of what I read based on people who actually knew him didn't think that he would have been involved. He wasn't somebody who would have just like been down to fight, which makes sense because it sounds like this fight like completely killed the vibe, especially for Todd, and he was like, I'm out of here. So he started walking home. On the way home, he made a phone call to his friend who had dropped him off just to let him know he had left and he was walking home. Seemed straightforward enough. And then from 12:47 to 12:57, Todd made some other phone calls that were described as out of character. One he makes to his sister and he says, I've had enough, hangs up, calls again and says that he's in this field, and then the phone went dead. She was concerned and called back, and the phone did pick up, but she said on the other end she never spoke to Todd again. She just kind of heard either heavy breathing or the wind blowing through the phone, and then it went dead. I mean, we don't know if I've had enough has anything to do with in reference of like people were fighting and completely killed the vibe. I gotta get out of here. We have no idea. What we do know is after this call, the phone was never used again and Todd never made it home. Quickly, word spread that Todd was missing and about 1,500 people were out looking for him. This included police, volunteers, an aircraft, and the main focus was this orchard area and then the road that Todd would have needed to take to get home. Nothing shows up on this initial search. They actually went back out 3 separate times, ensuring that nothing was overlooked and each time nothing was found. Here's where things get a little unnerving. On July 2nd, 2005, it's been 3 weeks since Todd's been missing, Todd's body was found, which led to more questions than answers. First was that Todd's body was found in, I hope I don't butcher it, and everyone's like, yeah, okay, stay tuned for Sherilyn butchering this. Ovidal Lake? I'm not familiar with it, but I guess this is right in the middle of the area that had just been searched, not once, not twice, but 3 times and combed through very thoroughly. Then there was the fact that the body was essentially standing in the water with his head and his shoulders just like out on the surface and then his body like standing submerged in the water. It's also important to know that he was also fully clothed. He even had his wallet in his back pocket. Extremely eerie that he was not only just found after 3 separate searches, but found dead in the lake in that position. Obviously, an autopsy was conducted. There were no obvious injuries to Todd's body, but he had a blood alcohol content of 0.12. So authorities automatically ruled it an accidental drowning due to being severely intoxicated. Their theory was that he went to the party, got obliterated, left to go wander about, and then all of a sudden he realizes he's stumbled into this lake, but he's too drunk to get back to shore and he drowned. And I mean, that doesn't sound like completely out of the realm of possibilities. Stranger things have happened. But his family and friends were really caught up on the phone calls that he made right before he disappeared and was never heard from again. And also like the extensive searches that happened. I mean, there were like 1,500 people, like I said, 3 times out there looking for Todd in that specific area, and nobody saw anything. And the way he was found is alarming in itself. Typically, drowning victims are found like with their face down and they're bobbing. So it was concerning that he was found upright, and it's believed that he would have been in that position for 3 weeks. These questions and concerns were enough for Todd's family to want to move forward with a private investigation, a narrative that we are always talking about and enrages me more and more every time. And the results of this private investigation just gave them validation, reaffirmed them that they weren't wrong or out of their mind to have these concerns. Based on the analysis from the investigation on the photos and the autopsy data, it was discovered that even though Todd had been missing for those 3 weeks before he was found, it's believed that he had only been dead for 2 to 5 days. It was also determined that Todd had no water in his lungs. And scientific clues that pointed to the fact that Todd was placed in the water after his death and not long before he was found. Dr. Benbow, that was the first time I said that name out loud and it sounded like I just made it up. I didn't though. Dr. Benbow is a forensic biologist from Michigan State University, and he re-examined Todd's case. He said based on the initial findings of the case, being that Todd would have been in this drunken stupor and just went on this random stroll and found himself in the middle of the lake, there should have been more biofilm, lakey slime, on Todd's body that was submerged in the water. Then for the area that was exposed, so the exposed part of his clothes, his mouth and ears, there should be insects in those exposed areas and even eggs. None of this was found on Todd. Further leaning into that, deceased bodies, especially in bodies of water, are consumed pretty quickly. We kind of discussed that on I believe it was part 2 of West Memphis 3. So Dr. Benbow really felt had it been 3 weeks of his body being there, there would have been, signs of consumption to the body. Dr. Benbow didn't just share his thoughts and theories about this, though. As a good doctor, he wanted to test out these theories and see if Todd was in fact there for 3 weeks, like investigators ruled and believed. So his team got 3 pig carcasses. They set up an experimental pond. They placed similar clothing to what Todd was wearing on these carcasses and put them in the pond for 3 weeks. This is giving me Murder Between Friend flashbacks with the episode where Gavin was talking about using pig carcass as well, pig skin, to carry out an amateur investigation that he wanted to do on his own. And he had this pig skin just laid out on his kitchen island while his wife was away. He had wrangled a couple of his children to do it. Anyways, the reason for that is because the skin is as similar as it can get to human skin. My apologies. When I first started talking about the pigs, I said there was 3. Too much threes going on here. There were actually 5. 5 pig carcasses were used. 3 of them, this time the 3 is for real, those were sampled every other day just to, be checked on. And then 2 were left completely untouched for 3 weeks. All of the carcasses had collected aquatic insects within the first day, and he said by the 3rd day, these insects had laid eggs. On day 21, the carcasses that were left there longer had completely collapsed from all of the insect activity, and the clothing was covered in this thick, sludgy, green biofilm algae. None of it was on Todd's shirt. So this very much strengthens his theories that Todd was placed there very quickly before he was found. These findings completely go against the narrative of closing Todd's case, that he drunkenly went in there and did this to himself. What's even more frustrating, it was later found out that Todd had 2 types of antidepressants in his body, despite, first of all, not even being prescribed antidepressants. And if you're new to the channel, there's nothing wrong with it. I am a huge mental health advocate. I myself am very blessed and thankful to be medicated. But Todd didn't need any. I'm gonna I'm going to butcher these names of the antidepressants, so bear with me here. The first trace of antidepressant was for a brand called Elavil, which is a tricyclic antidepressant. I guess its primary use is to treat major depressive disorders and a variety of pain syndromes also. Things like fibromyalgia, tension headaches, migraines. The other antidepressant was norpramine. I guess this is not the first choice used by physicians to prescribe to patients because of its effects that it can have on the heart, but it can be a good option if others haven't worked before it. I guess the issue with, not only because Todd had never been prescribed these, but in finding them together, is that they would have caused pretty severe side effects. I read that the side effects could have included hallucinations, confusion, coma, seizures, or cardiac arrest. Once it was discovered that these medications were found in Todd's system, and then coupled with the belief that based on these experiments, he was not in the lake for 3 weeks, those who know Todd believe that he consumed these medications without his knowledge. They could have been crushed up and he consumed them at the party and didn't even know. And that might also explain why, as he was making phone calls on his walk, they didn't sound like Todd. He could have been experiencing hallucinations or confusion, like that kind of makes sense that his sister was concerned enough by being like, what are you talking about? Also makes sense that it could have happened at the party and that someone was keeping an eye on him, because doctors have said that if you do consume these and you are going to have those side effects, usually they take place within an hour after consumption, which again lines up. And it gets even more disturbing, because if that is the case and Todd did consume these at the party and it started to take effect by the time he was walking away after this fight broke out and he was speaking to his sister, the distance between where he was found, at that moment he would have been incapacitated and not able to walk into the water. So again, if you didn't already believe based on the carcass experiment, this just further strengthens that theory. Long story short, within an hour, he probably was unconscious. Based on these experiments and the findings that the family had to go out and search for themselves, they presented it to the Michigan State Police. And in doing so, Kathy, Todd's mom, was granted a meeting with the county prosecutor. From this meeting, the prosecutor requested a full analysis of all of these discoveries, which were provided. But to this day, Thursday, February 2nd, 2023, when I'm recording, there's been no response or decision that Todd's case will be reinvestigated. When you look more into this case, there is a strong suspicion by a group of retired New York City detectives. Also in the group, there's a criminal justice professor and a gang expert that have come together, and they believe that Todd could potentially be a victim of what they call the smiley face killers. This is an alleged network of unknown serial killers. They believe they target college-aged men, and they dump their bodies in nearby bodies of water, and then nearby the scene, there's always some form of graffiti, smiley faces. There's a special on Oxygen about this theory, and then other possible victims if you want to check it out. Regardless, theories are not justice, and that is so frustrating. These families and these groups who are trying to solve all of these cases need more support from government and law enforcement, specifically government. Like, those resources need to be poured into proper justice. Having to conduct your own experiments, hiring your own experts, like, this is thousands of dollars. That's not justice. Even when you get it at the end of the day, you are not reimbursed for that. This is why so many victims don't get justice, and it's not because their loved ones don't want it for them and don't care and give up. It gets to a point where they physically, financially are completely broken down and can't do it anymore. And I know that we can't always be the one to fund full fights for justice. I'm so proud of the help that we can do when we can. But if you are somebody who hasn't been able to ever donate to a family, or you have and you wish that you could do more, one thing that I have learned, and so have the Sippendales, is these family members need words of encouragement and support and love just as much. It really keeps them strong when you see like a flood of new people hearing about a case, encouraging you to keep going and telling you like, I believe in you. I'm going to share the story. I'm going to garner as much attention as I can, tag all the media, everything that you can do. That just keeps them going. If you want to do that, Todd's family has a Facebook group. You can join. Go and send them all the love. It really, you guys, I'm telling you, it means so much. I will have the link for that in the description. For real, you are all amazing. This is your weekly reminder that you are truly making a difference in people's lives. Thank you for being the best extension of me that I could have ever asked for. I'm just one person. And yes, I have a platform, so my voice can be carried a lot farther, but you're the platform. You're the viewers. It's your decision if you want to watch this content and support me and go out and support families. Me leaving one comment like, I love you, I'm here for you, let me know what I can do, here's my donation. It can only stretch so far. So you make my voice so amplified. And for that, I will never, ever, ever be able to find the proper words to thank you. But thank you. I love you. All right, that is it for me today. If you haven't already, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Please subscribe. We are so dang close to 200,000. Look at us grow. It really means so much. It helps boost that good old algorithm that can just be the best or just the most frustrating sometimes, but it helps engage other people who have never seen my channel yet and reach people and get some more support on board. We need all the help we can get, you guys. So the likes, the comments, the subscriptions, they are not just, fancy little buttons that you want to click. I mean, they are, and they're fun to click sometimes. But that one little click, it means so much in the world of the algorithm. Okay, I gotta go. I'll see you in the next video. I will miss you terribly until then. Make sure to love each other, love yourself, and I will see you soon. Bye.